The evening had been quiet. Emily Parker sat on her small apartment couch in Boston, scrolling mindlessly through her phone after a long day at work. She was 28, independent, and used to loneliness. Her father, Richard Parker, had always been her anchor. They didn't talk every single day, but when they did, his deep voice carried comfort. That night, her phone buzzed. She expected it to be a text from her best friend, Claire. Instead, it was an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello. Is this Emily Parker?" a nurse's voice asked, firm but polite. "Yes, this is she," Emily replied, her heart instantly tightening. "I'm calling from St. Mary's Hospital. Your father, Richard Parker, was admitted this afternoon. He's stable at the moment, but we recommend that close relatives come to see him." Emily's breath caught. "Oh my God! What happened?" "He collapsed at home. We're running further tests. It would be best if you could come tonight." Emily stood up so quickly that her phone almost slipped from her hand. "Yes, I'll be there immediately." She grabbed her jacket, tossed her phone and wallet into her bag, and rushed outside to hail a cab. As the city lights blurred past, her mind flooded with memories. Her father teaching her to ride a bike, the way he used to pack her lunch for school, his proud smile at her college graduation. But then her thoughts darkened. She remembered Margaret, her father's second wife. Emily had never truly been accepted after her father remarried. Margaret's son, Daniel, always made her feel like an outsider. Still, she convinced herself that family didn't matter in emergencies. A daughter had the right to see her father. By the time she reached the hospital, her legs were trembling. She rushed to the front desk. "I'm here to see Richard Parker," she said quickly. The nurse scanned the list and frowned. "I'm sorry. You're not on the approved visitors list." Emily blinked in disbelief. "What? I'm his daughter. His only daughter." The nurse's expression softened but remained firm. "I understand, ma'am, but hospital policy requires that only names on the list provided by the family can visit. I can't allow you through." Emily's voice cracked. "Who gave you the list?" "His wife, Mrs. Margaret Parker." Emily's stomach twisted. "Of course. Margaret." She tried again, her voice rising. "Please. I'm his daughter. I have every right." Before she could finish, Margaret herself appeared, her heels clicking on the white tiles, Daniel following close behind. Margaret's face was painted with false concern, but her eyes narrowed coldly when they landed on Emily. "What are you doing here?" Margaret asked, her tone sharp. Emily swallowed hard. "I came to see my father. Why am I not on the list?" Margaret adjusted her pearl necklace, feigning calm. "Richard needs rest, not drama. You weren't called because it's best for him. Go home, Emily." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "He's my father. I deserve to see him." Daniel stepped forward, smirking. "You heard, Mom. Leave." Emily's chest tightened, her voice trembling as she whispered, "I'm not leaving without seeing him." Margaret's lips curled into a cold smile. "Then you'll be waiting forever." Emily stood frozen as Margaret turned and walked back toward the ward, Daniel at her side. The nurse glanced at Emily with pity, but the rules were clear. Emily sank into one of the waiting chairs, her hands shaking, her heart breaking. For the first time in her life, she felt what it truly meant to be shut out. Emily sat in the cold waiting area of St. Mary's Hospital, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. The walls were white, the air smelled of disinfectant, and the steady beep of machines echoed faintly from the ward beyond. She had never felt so helpless. After 20 minutes, she stood again and walked firmly to the desk. "Please," she begged the nurse. "Can you at least tell my father I'm here? Just let him know his daughter came." The nurse's eyes softened. "I'll try to pass along a message when I can." Emily exhaled shakily, whispering, "Thank you." But as the nurse disappeared down the hall, Margaret returned. Her sharp heels echoed like a warning bell, Daniel striding beside her with his usual arrogance. Margaret folded her arms. "Emily, how many times must I tell you? Your father needs peace, not you barging in and upsetting him." Emily's fists clenched at her sides. "Upset him? I'm his daughter. He loves me. He raised me." "You married him, Margaret, but you can never erase me from his life." Daniel snorted. "Raised you? He barely even talks about you. You ran off, and now suddenly you care because he's sick." Emily turned on him, her voice trembling but fierce. "You have no idea what bond he and I share. Don't you dare talk about me like that." A few people in the waiting area turned their heads, sensing the tension. Margaret's lips tightened. She lowered her voice, each word like ice. "You are not going in, Emily. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not ever, if I have anything to say about it." Emily's breath caught. "Why are you doing this? What are you so afraid of? That he might ask for me instead of you?" For a moment, Margaret's face flickered, but then she smoothed it over with a cruel smile. "Go home. You don't belong here." Emily wanted to scream, to shove past them, to break through the doors and run to her father's bedside. But the guard at the corner stepped closer, already alert to the commotion. Margaret gave Emily one last cold stare, then turned away, her perfume lingering like poison in the air. Daniel followed, smirking over his shoulder. Emily collapsed back into her chair, hot tears running down her face. She covered her mouth to muffle the sob that tore from her chest. Her phone buzzed. It was Claire, her best friend. Where are you? You sound awful." Emily sniffled. "I'm at the hospital. My dad's here, but Margaret won't let me see him." There was silence, then Claire's voice, filled with disbelief. "What? That's insane. You're his daughter. How can they block you?" Emily's throat tightened. "Because she's in control. She's got all the power. And I have nothing." Claire's voice softened. "Don't say that. You're his blood. He knows you love him. Maybe he'll find a way to reach you." Emily swallowed hard, gripping the phone. She wanted to believe that. But as the hours ticked by, she remained locked out, staring at the doors that kept her from her father. And deep inside, a fear grew that time was slipping away. The following morning, Emily returned to St. Mary's, her eyes heavy from a night without sleep. She hadn't stopped thinking about her father. What if those locked doors had been her last chance? The thought gnawed at her. As soon as she arrived, she went straight to the front desk. A different nurse was on duty now, a younger woman with kind brown eyes. "Good morning," Emily began carefully. "My father is Richard Parker. I know I'm not on the official list, but can you please just let him know I'm here? Please." The nurse hesitated, glancing toward the ward. Then she leaned forward. "I'll see what I can do. Wait here." Emily's heart raced as the nurse disappeared through the restricted doors. Minutes crawled by. She tapped her foot nervously, her palms sweaty. When the nurse finally returned, she held a folded piece of paper. She slipped it into Emily's hand discreetly. "He wanted you to have this," she whispered. "But please, don't say I gave it to you. I could get in trouble." Emily's throat tightened. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching the paper. She rushed to the corner and unfolded it with trembling hands. The note was shaky, the handwriting uneven, but it was undeniably her father's. "Emily, I love you. Don't let them keep you away. I wanted to see you. Stay strong for me." Emily covered her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. She pressed the note to her chest, her heart aching. Suddenly, a harsh voice cut through the air. "What do you think you're doing?" Margaret stood there, Daniel at her side. Margaret's eyes darted to the note in Emily's hands, and her face twisted with fury. Emily quickly folded the paper and tucked it into her bag. He wrote to me. He wants me here. You can't keep us apart. Margaret stepped closer, her voice sharp enough to slice through steel. That man is delirious. He doesn't know what he's saying. I make the decisions now. Emily's jaw tightened. You don't get to erase me. I am his daughter. He wanted me, not you. Daniel sneered. Don't make a scene. You look pathetic. Emily's tears burned hot, but she stood tall. I don't care how pathetic I look. I won't stop. He knows I love him. That's all that matters. Margaret's lips curved into a cruel smirk. Love doesn't matter when power is on my side. Before Emily could respond, a security guard approached. Ma'am, is there a problem here? Margaret turned sweet, her tone dripping with false concern. No problem at all, officer. Just a troubled young woman making a fuss. She was just leaving. The guard looked at Emily with sympathy, but his presence was clear. She wasn't getting in. Emily's chest heaved with frustration. She wanted to scream, to fight, to tear through those locked doors and hold her father's hand. But she knew Margaret would only use her outburst against her. With shaking legs, Emily walked out of the hospital. Outside, she pulled out the note again and clutched it tightly. Her father's last words to her were written on that fragile piece of paper. She didn't know then that it would be the last thing she ever received from him. The next 2 days were torture. Emily barely ate, barely slept. She clung to her father's note like it was the last piece of him she had left. Every few hours, she called the hospital, asking for updates. Each time, the nurses gave vague responses, carefully avoiding details. It was clear Margaret had left strict instructions. On the third evening, Emily's phone rang. She snatched it up, hope flickering that maybe it was her father asking for her. Hello, she said quickly. But the voice on the other end was flat, clinical. Is this Emily Parker? Yes, Emily whispered, already sensing the weight in the caller's tone. This is Dr. Reynolds from St. Mary's. I'm very sorry to inform you, your father, Richard Parker, passed away earlier this afternoon. Emily froze. The world tilted. What? The doctor's voice was gentle but final. His heart gave out. We did everything we could. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the floor, her phone clattering beside her. Tears blurred her vision as a wail tore from her chest. No, no, no. Her neighbor from across the hall, Mrs. Turner, rushed in after hearing the cry. Emily! What happened? Emily clutched the note to her chest, sobbing uncontrollably. He's gone. My dad, he's gone. Mrs. Turner knelt beside her, wrapping her in an embrace. Oh, honey. Emily could barely breathe. She kept repeating the words, as though saying them out loud might make them less true. I didn't get to see him. I didn't get to say goodbye. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Daniel's number. Through the blur of tears, she answered. Emily, Daniel's voice came, cold and smug. Dad's gone. The funeral will be family only. Don't bother showing up. Emily's heart dropped further. What? You can't do this. I'm his daughter. I have a right. Daniel cut her off. You had your chance. You chose not to be here. Don't cause trouble now. The line went dead. Emily sat frozen, the phone pressed against her ear, her body trembling. She felt as though the world had been ripped out from beneath her. Her father was dead. She hadn't seen him. She hadn't held his hand. She hadn't said goodbye. And now they were going to bury him without her. Her sobs shook the tiny apartment. Daddy, she whispered into the silence. I'm so sorry. But the only answer was the hollow echo of her grief. 2 days later, Emily dressed in black. Her eyes were swollen from sleepless nights, her hands trembling as she clutched the small note her father had written. She was determined, no matter what Margaret or Daniel said, she would be at her father's funeral. Claire arrived early to drive her. "I don't care what they told you," Claire said firmly as she hugged her. "You're his daughter. No one can erase that." Emily nodded, though her chest tightened with dread. Together they drove to the funeral home. When they arrived, the parking lot was empty. Emily frowned. That can't be right. The service was supposed to be today. They walked inside. The receptionist at the front desk gave them a puzzled look. "Can I help you?" "Yes," Emily said quickly. "Richard Parker's funeral. I'm his daughter." The receptionist's brow furrowed. "I'm sorry, ma'am. That service was held yesterday morning. Private family only." Emily felt as though someone had punched her in the chest. "Yesterday," she whispered. "Yes." His wife, Mrs. Parker, insisted on a quiet ceremony. Emily staggered back, her voice cracking. "She buried him without me?" Claire put an arm around her, fury flashing in her eyes. "This is cruel. Absolutely cruel." Tears streamed down Emily's face. She pressed her palms to her temples, shaking her head. "I didn't get to see him in the hospital. I didn't get to say goodbye, and now they've buried him without me." The receptionist's tone softened. "I'm truly sorry, ma'am. There's nothing more I can do." Emily stumbled out of the funeral home, her sobs echoing down the empty hallway. Outside, she collapsed against Claire's car, her body trembling. Claire held her tightly. "They can control a funeral, Em, but they can't erase what you had with your dad. They can't take that from you." But Emily's grief felt unbearable. She knelt on the pavement, whispering through her tears, "Daddy, I wasn't there. Forgive me." Above her, the sky was gray, heavy with clouds, as if even heaven mourned the injustice. Emily shut herself inside her apartment for days after the funeral that never was. The blinds stayed closed, the lights dim. Empty takeout boxes gathered on the counter. Untouched mugs of coffee went cold. She barely spoke, barely moved. But silence can only hold grief for so long before it turns into something sharper. One evening, Claire knocked gently before letting herself in. She found Emily sitting on the floor, her father's note in her hands. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow. "Em," Claire said softly, sitting beside her. "You need to eat something. You need to." "I needed to be there," Emily interrupted, her voice breaking. "At the hospital. At his funeral. I needed to hold his hand before he—" She covered her face, sobbing. Claire put an arm around her. "I know. And it's unforgivable what they did. But your dad knew you loved him." Emily shook her head, anger bubbling through her grief. "Margaret knew exactly what she was doing. She locked me out of the hospital. She buried him without me. She made sure the world believed I wasn't his daughter." Her hands tightened around the note until the paper crumpled. "She took everything from me. My chance to say goodbye. My right as his child. And she doesn't even care." Claire's eyes narrowed. "She wanted you erased. But Emily, you're not erased. You're alive. You're still here. And you still have a voice." Emily stared at her, the words sinking in. For the first time in days, the numbness began to crack, not with sorrow, but with rage. "She doesn't get to win," Emily whispered. Claire squeezed her hand. "Then don't let her." That night, Emily sat awake at her kitchen table, staring at her father's note. Her tears had dried, leaving behind a heavy resolve. Margaret had taken her right to say goodbye. But Emily swore she would not let her take her father's memory too. Emily woke up the next morning with swollen eyes but a fire simmering in her chest. She had cried long enough. Now she needed answers. She started by calling her father's old friend and business partner, George Miller, a man she remembered from childhood dinners. His voice cracked with sorrow when he picked up. "Emily, I was hoping you'd call. I'm so sorry about your dad." Emily's throat tightened. "George, they didn't let me see him. They didn't even tell me about the funeral until it was over. I need to know why. Why would Margaret do this to me?" George was silent for a long moment before sighing. "Emily, there are things you don't know. Your father's estate, it's complicated. He left a considerable inheritance, and Margaret wants it all," Emily cut in bitterly. "Yes," George admitted. "Your father confided in me months ago that he was planning to revise his will. He wanted to make sure you were provided for properly. But Margaret found out. She wasn't happy. If you had been around during his last days, he might have confirmed his wishes in front of witnesses. She couldn't risk that." Emily gripped the phone, her heart pounding. "So she kept me away to control everything." George's voice lowered. "I hate to say it, but yes. Daniel's been pushing her too. They're painting you as distant, the estranged daughter who only came around for money." Emily's chest burned with fury. "That's a lie. I didn't care about his money. I just wanted to be with him." "I know, Emily," George said softly. "Your father knew too. He loved you more than anything. Don't let them take that truth away from you." After hanging up, Emily sat in stunned silence. The pieces clicked into place. Margaret's coldness, her obsession with control, her determination to cut Emily out, none of it had been about peace or rest for her father. It had been about power. Emily pulled the crumpled note from her bag and read it again. "Stay strong for me." Her father had known. He had trusted her to fight. And for the first time since his death, Emily felt a spark of purpose. For days, Emily drifted between rage and despair. She barely ate, barely slept, haunted by the injustice. At night, she replayed it all in her head, the nurse refusing her, Margaret's cold stare, Daniel's mocking smirk, the empty funeral home. It was suffocating. One evening, she sat on the floor of her apartment, her father's note in one hand, a bottle of wine in the other. The tears wouldn't stop. "Why, Daddy?" she whispered into the silence. "Why didn't you fight for me harder? Why didn't you make it clear enough so they couldn't erase me?" Her voice cracked, and she pressed the note against her chest. "I wasn't there. I failed you." The guilt was crushing. She poured another glass of wine, her hands trembling. The thought slipped into her mind uninvited. Maybe she didn't want to keep going. What was left for her now? A sharp knock on the door startled her. She wiped her face quickly, but when she opened the door, Claire was standing there, eyes filled with worry. Claire said gently, stepping inside. She glanced at the wine bottles on the table, then at Emily's tear-streaked face. "You can't do this to yourself." Emily broke down again. "I lost him, Claire. I lost my dad, and I lost my chance to say goodbye. And now they're making me look like I never cared." Claire cupped her face firmly, forcing her to meet her eyes. "Listen to me. You didn't lose him. He left you something no one else has, a father's love. And you have his words." She tapped the note still clutched in Emily's hand. "He told you to stay strong. Don't let Margaret and Daniel win. Don't let them rewrite the story." Emily's sobs quieted. Claire's words cut through the fog of despair. She looked at the note again. "Stay strong for me." It felt like her father's voice echoing through the pain. Emily sat up straighter, wiping her tears. Her voice was still shaky, but it carried a hint of steel. "You're right. I can't let them erase me. I'm his daughter. And if they want to fight, then I'll fight." Claire squeezed her hand. That's the Emily I know. And you won't be fighting alone. For the first time since her father's death, Emily felt something other than grief. She felt resolve. The next morning, Emily woke up with a pounding headache, but this time it wasn't just from tears or wine. It was from determination. She sat at her small kitchen table, laptop open, scrolling through law firms in Boston. Most were out of her price range. She didn't have much saved. Her job at the bookstore barely covered rent. But she refused to let money stop her. Claire, sitting across from her with a mug of coffee, leaned forward. You need someone tough. Someone who won't be intimidated by Margaret's lawyers. Emily nodded. I don't care what it costs. She can't just erase me like I never existed. I'll fight her if it takes everything I have. They eventually found a firm that offered free consultations. By afternoon, Emily was seated in a quiet office across from a woman named Sarah Whitman, a sharp-eyed attorney in her 40s. So, Sarah said, folding her hands, you're telling me your stepmother prevented you from seeing your father in the hospital, excluded you from the funeral, and is now moving forward with his estate as though you don't exist? Emily's throat tightened as she nodded. Yes. And my father, he wrote me this before he died. She slid the fragile note across the desk. Sarah read it carefully, her expression hardening. This is significant. It proves your father acknowledged you and wanted you involved. If he had intentions to update his will, we may have grounds to challenge her. Emily leaned forward. So I have a chance. Sarah gave a small smile. You're his daughter, Emily. You have more than a chance. You have rights. But I won't lie to you. Cases like this can get ugly. Your stepmother will fight tooth and nail. Are you ready for that? Emily hesitated, fear flickering inside her. But then she thought of Margaret's cold voice, Daniel's mocking tone, and the fact she had been shut out of the two most important moments of her father's life, his last breath and his final goodbye. Her jaw tightened. I'm ready. Sarah nodded. Then let's begin. By the time Emily left the office, she felt a strange calm settle over her. Grief still weighed heavily on her heart, but now it was joined by something else, hope. For the first time, she wasn't just mourning. She was fighting back. The courthouse smelled faintly of polished wood and nerves. Emily sat at the plaintiff's table beside Sarah Whitman, her lawyer, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Across the aisle, Margaret and Daniel sat with their attorney, a tall man in an expensive gray suit who exuded arrogance. Margaret wore black again, as though the performance of grieving widowhood had not yet ended. Daniel sat beside her, smug as ever, tapping his pen against the table like a victory drum. When the judge entered, everyone rose. Emily's knees wobbled, but she stood tall. She whispered to herself, "Stay strong for me." The proceedings began. Sarah opened with a measured, powerful voice. Your Honor, my client, Emily Parker, is the biological daughter of Richard Parker. She was deliberately barred from visiting her father during his last days and intentionally excluded from his funeral. We have reason to believe this was done to manipulate the handling of his estate. We seek recognition of her rights as his daughter and beneficiary. Margaret's lawyer rose smoothly. Your Honor, the defense denies these allegations. Mrs. Parker and her son Daniel cared for Richard through his final illness. Emily was estranged. She abandoned her father years ago and only resurfaced when she smelled money. Emily's chest burned. She gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned white. The judge turned to Margaret. Mrs. Parker, is it true you prevented Miss Parker from visiting her father in the hospital? Margaret tilted her head, feigning innocence. Your Honor, Richard needed rest. Emily has always been difficult. Her presence would have upset him. Emily couldn't contain herself. She stood abruptly, her voice trembling but fierce. That's a lie. He wanted to see me. He wrote me this. She pulled the fragile note from her purse and handed it to Sarah, who passed it to the judge. The courtroom hushed as the judge read aloud, "Emily, I love you. Don't let them keep you away. Stay strong for me." Margaret's face tightened, her mask slipping for just a second. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The judge set the paper down carefully. "This clearly indicates Mr. Parker wished for his daughter's presence. Mrs. Parker, do you deny this is his handwriting?" Margaret's lips thinned. He was confused. Sick people scribble nonsense all the time. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to look away. She stared directly at Margaret. "You stole my goodbye. You buried him without me. But you can't bury the truth." For the first time, Margaret's composure cracked. She turned her head sharply, refusing to meet Emily's gaze. The judge leaned back in his chair. "This court will review the evidence carefully. But let it be clear, biology, intention, and truth cannot simply be erased by convenience." Emily sat down slowly, her heart pounding. For once, Margaret didn't look so untouchable. For the first time, Emily felt her father's voice inside her again. "Stay strong, my girl. You're not alone."